Yat e, Shik Edo Shidina. Ado, my good relatives, once more across the Navajo Nation, beyond the Navajo Nation. My message today is directly at all of my young nephews, nieces, the teenagers that are there, and especially those of you that are living out in the cities such as Phoenix, Beldilasanil, Albuquerque, Farmington, Gallup, Flagstaff. Those of you that cannot speak your language or that do not understand your language. There are relatives of mine who can understand the language, but they can't speak it. However way, my message to you today, I bring to you with really good feelings and thoughts and hope that I have for our Diné language. I was blessed with the fact that Navajo, Diné Bizaad, is my first language. That's all I spoke until I was second grade in elementary school. That's when I learned the English language, which is my second language. However, my nephews and nieces today, although they grew up on the reservation, they do not speak the English language or the Navajo language the way that it's supposed to be spoken. Or some of them, they do not speak the Navajo language. So it was a challenge early on for me to try to teach them the language. And I was a Navajo language teacher at one time. Now, when you say teaching the Navajo language, there were different phases of the teaching of the language throughout the course of the years. There was one time when all of the students were speaking Navajo first, then we had to teach them the English language. Then in return, teach them Navajo terms that were translated from English words. And we came through those times. Today, predominantly, the English language is prevalent in a lot of the homes, in the schools. So our whole approach to teaching the language changes over the course of time as well. So today, I want to express some thoughts and some feelings and just my overall testimony on just how much I love the Navajo language. I love the Navajo language as if it was a person, like a brother or a sister or even a son or a daughter. The relationship that I have with my language. I believe that it gives me good blessings. It gives me a logical way of thought. It gives me common sense as well. And so it does a lot for me. But the most prized and intimate and satisfying part of speaking my language is I'm able to express myself the way that my heart feels, the way that my mind feels, the way that I'm thinking, my thinking process. I'm able to express that in my language, the Bizaad. And I try that in the English language, but it fails a lot of times. So I think that that's the most satisfying part of speaking my language. One part of speaking my language is my ability to communicate with my Holy Spirit, with the holy people, with this creation, which is embedded in the ceremonies that we have here. And so that is really the essence, the backbone of my language. Let me tell you a story. I wondered one time and asked my grandparents, I said, Grandma, Grandpa, Che, Masana, where did this language come from? Was it just always there? Where did it come from? So they told me a short story. They said that At one time, there was a place called the Black World. And they say that there was a universal holy being that was there in the Black World. And through the thought of that holy being, it made a thought, and it came in the form of a light. And that light, it became the form of Hashilki, which is, we call talking God. And then it also exerted a feeling from the depths of its emotions, and that came in form of a light again. And then at the end of that light, then the holy being of Hash'awan, sucking talking God, it came in the form of that. And then through that, then they had to communicate. They had to communicate. So the concept of communication was created so that Hash'ilki and Hash'awan would communicate. And so through that, then they created what they call Bizaad, white shell language. And then they created Bizaad, turquoise language. And then through that, they created the Bizaad, abalone language. And then through that, they created Bizaad, black jet language. And then it became a male language and a female language together in duality. That would be what would be used for them to communicate with one another. And then through that formation of the four languages, then they created dimension. Dimension in terms of forward, backwards, down, and up. So the concept of dimension in the four directions was created through the language. And then the four seasons was created: spring, summer, fall, and winter, because of the language. And then the concept of number 4 was created also through the language of the Yolke Dot Iji Dichle Bashini language. And so that's the concept of 4 was created like that. And it was the language that prompted the creation of all of this. And so that's how sacred the language is, because it was the catalyst, it was the foundation of the concept of 4, the concept of dimension, the concept of the season. And then it also was used to create the 4 blood flow that we have: the red blood flow, the white blood flow, the blue blood flow, and the black blood flow that we have here. And through that, that's how we have our Adonai, our mother's clan, our father's clan, Bashil Chin, and then our Che's clan, our maternal grandfather's clan, and then our Nulli's clan, our paternal grandfather's clan. And that is directly related to the 4 blood cells that we have, the 4 blood flows. That is directly related to the number 4, and that is directly related to the language, which served as the catalyst or the foundation of this creation. They also told me that the language was created so that we could communicate with the holy people, that we could communicate with this creation. So through our prayer, they said that it came in the form of a prayer, so digin. We just say so dizin, kind of like quickly say it. But if you say it correctly, you say so digin. So means your tongue. They say that your tongue, at the tip of your tongue, where your tongue is, this is where the holy people place the male language and the female language. They put it right there in the form of tchatatin and nt'ani. Corn pollen and the nt'ani. They call that, translated, it doesn't sound right, but they translate it to sound like corn beetle girl. It doesn't make any sense, but that's the translation. That's how much the English language doesn't give justice a lot of times. But when you say tchatatin and t'ani, then you say sa'ahnare sa'ad, bik'ahojon sa'ad. So they placed it right at the tip of our tongue. And so they say that so digin. So when we speak from here, it's in the form of a sacred holy sound. Translated again. Hat so etigin. Hat so tizin so digin. So your ability to communicate with the holy people, your ability to communicate with this Nohostan, Mother Earth, your ability to communicate with this Father Sky, Yatishkil, your ability to communicate with Tzitlistan, Twistan, mountains and water, air, water, light, all of these, your ability to communicate. They say that us, Nahokat and us Navajo, we have that ability to address maybe a pinyon tree or even a pine tree, give it some tadadin and talk to it just like a person. That's our ability. That's number one why we have our language. So today, when you think about it, especially when you go to ceremony, the majority of that ceremony is in existence. It operates, it functions because of the ceremony, because of the language that we have. So for example, like when I get a patient here, and then whoever that I need to pray for might give him some medicine, the tzichlej or something, give it to them, and they sit here and you begin your prayer, and you might say that I am the child of the white shell woman, as the white shell woman's white shell moccasins, I wear the same moccasins. These prayers are like that, and they're all in Navajo, the Nek Echo. So when you speak that, you can say those prayers, or when you sing a song like that, see, you're describing what that sacred mountain is doing. You're utilizing your language, which is an integral part of that song that you're singing. So language is the backbone, the essence, the soul and spirit of our Navajo ceremonies. So now think about it, my relatives. If we don't have the language, we don't have the ceremony. If we don't have the language, we don't have the ceremony. And we don't have the ceremony, we really are not who we're supposed to be as Nahokat. And that is the essence. As the saying goes, it's not the color of our skin that makes us the ne. It's our language, our ceremony, our protocols, our ethics, our principles, and our laws. And they're all language based. So that is the reason why we were given this sacred language. Number two, my grandparents said, we were given this language so that we could communicate with one another, to express the essence, the true, intimate, sincere feelings to one another. And we call that keh, keh, keh. So like for me, I say that to my children, my sons and my daughter. Ashana sha'awe shiyaja shana tisawe. My mother still says that to me. Shana shiya sha'awe shiyaja sha'awe. My father still says that to me. That is totally different from having to tell my son, Jonathan, or my daughter, Shanoa. There's a difference. Or if my mother would say, my son, Justin, the effect of it and the depths of it is not the same, utilizing the English language. But when my father and my mother call Shinat, Shaweh, Shiyaja, Tisaweh, even though I'm this old, they still say that to me. And so that's what they were describing, because that's how we express to one another keh, the concept of keh. Keh, when you express that, you have feelings, you have love, you have respect, you have all of that in there when you say keh. Now, if you just say Paul, Susan, that has no effect. And I really saw that and experienced that when I used to be in the classroom. I would get students in. So day one, we would all introduce ourselves by our clans. and we already made relationships. They might be my nephew, they might be my grandson, or my aunt, or whomever, like that. And so throughout the course of the semester, we would continue that. So there are times when you have to motivate your students. There are times when you have to kind of uplift them because of the different things that they bring to your classroom. Maybe depression, maybe they're lonely, maybe there's something going on at their home. So through that, you talk to them, you motivate them, you get to their learning skills and capacities. That's where you want to get at, to get their attention. So rather than just saying John or Michael or Ethel or whoever, and you try to explain maybe a concept to them, rather when you say Sho Sitsile, here's the concept here, or Shemayaja Sho, try real hard, I know you can do it. Shemayaja, you're just not really applying yourself. Put some more effort into it. There's a difference. Or in disciplining, rather than say, hey, I don't, sit still. But when you say, sit sile, shemayaja, khajosanta, isanta, there's a difference. So that's the beauty of our language as well. That's why they said it's so that we could communicate with one another like that. And through that, those are the two reasons why we were given this language by the holy people. So today, we have the language here, but a lot of you young people, you don't really speak your language, or none of you, and some of you, you don't speak your language. So there's a kind of like a fear now. And I understand that too. I really do understand that. Because for the longest time, when our nephews and our nieces, when they didn't speak the language, we would chastise them. So why don't you not learn your language? That type of an approach to them. And so I know some of you experience that. So it makes you feel really low and really small and unimportant. You were hurt by that. Or when you try to say something and say tepe, or you might just say tete, things like that. And if you might try to say oh, which is hey, and you might just say glo, you're talking about laughing. So that's the kind of things that had happened. And people would laugh at you. So those are some of the traumas that you've all felt and came through a lot of times. And it's still here. A lot of people, they still say that. But my relatives, to me, I think that a different approach needs to be taken. A lot of times we talk about how do we retain our language? How do we have these language programs for our young people here? So yeah, we can provide classes, in college, or maybe in high school, or even in the elementary school levels. We can provide all of those. But it's something that we're compelling you to do. We're compelling you to do it. So you're not going to do it if you have no interest in it. It's not going to work. Because some of this trauma is still there. This climate is still like that. I mean, case in point, a lot of times, we still go to Winderot, and you go to, I make the example, you go to a council session, and everybody still talks in English. And everybody addresses each other as Mr. Begay or Mr. So or all of that. Nobody says Sho, Shiyaj, Shiche. The same way across the street over the president's office. Hey Jimmy, how you doing? Sally, yat eh. All of that is still there. So we have to change that climate. We have to change that. We have to make the climate where it is with open arms. So one of the questions I usually get is that, what are you going to do as president? The first thing that I think I'm going to do is I need to begin to work on that climate. One of the things is to begin to encourage the executive staff to begin to introduce each other by their clans. through their clans. And that's what I used to do in a classroom. Make sure that everybody knew what their clans were and to begin to interact with each other by clanship expressions. So that might be the first thing that we're going to do, is to begin to break down that climate and to begin to start addressing each other by our clans. Things like that. And then also to begin to make that as a part of dealing with and addressing the Navajo people that come for services as well. One of the things about beauty of language and cat is that you're friendly, you smile. So that would alleviate a lot of the customer service we often complained about in Windarock, where they say, "What do you want? Come back." Rather, I want to change that climate as far as customer service is concerned. Say, "Oh, yeah, hey," she said, "So good to see you. Oh, yeah, and Johnny, now he'll silla oh quagga yeah." That kind of an atmosphere. And then through that, to begin to upscale that usage of the language as much as we can. Right now, I hear different theories and different ways and strategies. But as a language teacher, one of the things that is not really going to give us any justice immediately is to start creating language centers. We can create 50 language centers. But guess what's going to happen? Maybe the first day, 50 people might sign up for a language center. But as time goes along, 10 days down the road, you can have about 5 people sitting in there. And then as time goes along, it's going to get even worse than that. Because we have not done anything about the climate. The whole atmosphere and the whole approach to language is beautiful. You have to want to learn it. So in either to facilitate that for you, we have to change all this climate that we have, and we need to show you that as well. We need to break down those barriers, and we need to start being empathetic to those traumas that you might have felt. Because at the end, you need to want to learn your language. If you can develop that yourself, I think that we're doing good. On the other hand, we can develop 50 language centers here and there, but guess what? We don't have the teachers to teach that as well. We're in a language teacher shortage right now. A lot of the schools, they cannot find Navajo language teachers. So rather than doing that, I think we need to, the government, at least the executive branch, can begin to bring that climate of, and this whole idea and the whole spirit of Navajo language is good. You feel good, you feel happy when you speak your language. There's beauty in language. It makes you a better person when you speak your language. On the other hand, there is a whole host of jokes and humor that's Navajo based also, the Navajo language. And it doesn't do any good when you try to translate a Navajo humorous expression or joke back to English. You lose the punchline right off the back. So it seems like you would be enjoying a whole new other world that's over here, full of humor, full of enjoyment, and full of tranquility in one way or another. One of my the things that I most enjoy is to listen to prayer in Navajo. I love to listen to prayer in Navajo. And so in that, likewise, I love to pray in my own language, to speak to my Creator, to speak to this creation in my own language as well, because you can really feel the Spirit like that. And so those are some of the things that I believe that the Navajo language brings, and some of the things that I believe that we need to begin to do. But most of all is to make you comfortable with it, to have it here without any boundaries, without any expectations, but just to open it for you and let you see the beauty of it. Let you feel the beauty of listening to your language here. And so those are some things I believe that as a nation, as a president of the Navajo Nation, that we can begin to really address. And so there are plenty of money and funding available for language programs. The state of New Mexico has a set of funding for Navajo language programs. The Bureau of Indian Education has language program funding. There's a lot of funding that's out there. But the way that they're set up and the way that they're, to me, seem like they're missing the point, where you're compelling a student to do it. You're compelling somebody. We need to downplay all of that, deregulate all of that, and make it fun. Make it interesting. And give you reasons why you should be speaking your language. Not the way that it always has been, which is, you have to learn your language. No, we need to give you all of the explanations and the environment and the resources where that interest would come. When you become interested in your own language, that's when that learning comes. And so, like they say, when you're learning a ceremony, when you're learning a song, it's like this. Learn that song because you want to learn it. Don't be scared of it. Because if you're scared of that song, it's going to be scared of you too, because that song has a spirit. The same way with this language. This language has a spirit to it. And if you are not scared of that language, it's not going to be scared of you, so you're going to connect somewhere. That's the belief. That's the belief. And sure enough, it's going to be like that. And so that's the spirit of that language. But I think in a more global and for the future of our nation as well, my relatives, think about this. I cannot imagine a time in our Navajo Nation when the language is not ever spoken again. But even more important, I cannot imagine a time in our Navajo Nation when ceremonies are no longer going to be performed the way that they're being performed, because nobody speaks the language. And if nobody speaks the language, you can't say the prayers. And if you can't say the prayers, you can't sing the songs. That's very mind-provoking. That's very heart-wrenching. To me, that is a crisis to me. That's what you call a crisis. Because our language, our prayers, our songs, the way that we go about our life like that is language-based. So thereby, if we lose the language, we're just like everybody else again. So that's something to consider. So with that, I want to encourage all of you. Shalchin Otlenigi, Setsoke, Shanalika, and the Dae, Selke, Jake Otlenigi, my young people, my young relatives, don't be scared of your language. Want to do it. Desire that. Because to me, I'm going to do what I can to provide that. I even have an idea. The first Navajo Nation president, I can hold a language class. I can even share some of these language stories with you throughout the course of the year. Because I love to teach. I love to talk about our culture. I love to tell these stories. I love to explain some of these Diné concepts and break it down for you so that you can understand it. I love to do that. So with that, I want to encourage all of you. And like I said, we have a saying in our campaign now. We say, Yergo Diné Bizaad, Yergo Diné Bizaad. And thank you for your kind attention again.